The Ohio EPA has issued an air permit to install related to the proposed PTT-GCA petrochemical complex that will be located on the banks of the Ohio River at Shadyside. Here are selected testimony from the Ohio EPA's water permit modification hearing for the proposed cracker plant, which took place on December 12, 2018.
This hearing is just a formality in a process corrupted by the fossil fuel industry. They control our government, our economy, our media, and our regulatory agencies. Even our educational systems are being targeted with pro-fossil fuel curriculum. Why should we trust the EPA when the federal and state EPAs have become a revolving door between industry, government officials, and lobbyists, as proven by a current investigation from the General Accounting Office? This represents an enormous conflict of interest, like the fox guarding the henhouse. Since the passage of Citizens United, we have the best politicians money can buy, and fossil fuels are certainly buying them up on all levels of government. Unfortunately, these politicians have no concept of peer-reviewed science. Anyone who took a high school chemistry class would realize that adding these chemicals, which are toxic and persistent, into our air and water will not improve the health of the Valley residents, nor improve the already poor water quality of the Ohio River. One local official said recently that he hasn't seen any fact-based data on the dangers of cracker plants. Really? There are numerous resources and studies, but choosing not to read them doesn't make the dangers go away. Sadly, the most affected populations will be the children and future generations of the Valley. They will not be able to speak on their behalf. This issue goes beyond citing a cracker plant in a region that is so depressed that they're practically begging for jobs. It is pathetic. This is about greed, fueled by the fossil fuel industry, who is waging a war on humanity and the planet. With total disregard for our lives and the lives of billions of other species on this planet, this industry, the same one that is responsible for the Deepwater Horizon and the Exxon Valdez, has ignored its own scientists' warnings of climate change and has conducted a climate denial campaign since the late 1960s. Why would we believe anything put forward by an industry that is solely responsible for making money at the expense of our children's futures? When other countries of the world are enacting bans on single-use plastics and investing in renewable energy, we continue down this dark road with fossil fuels. And for the last few seconds that I have, this is a list of all of the nations and cities and organizations that are now banning single-use plastics across the globe. So you may want to think, is this really an economical good idea when everybody else in the world is seeing what plastics and fossil fuels are doing to the world?
Hey folks, my name is Flynn Pollard. I'm a regional organizer with an organization called the Climate Reality Project. Okay, we're an international nonprofit. We're based in the United States. We operate around the country. All right. Our mission is to catalyze a global solution to the climate crisis by making urgent action necessary across every level of society. Now, I know that phrase, climate crisis, might not be particularly salient in this room. I get that. I get that. I also know there's concerns about people coming from outside. I get that. I grew up in southern West Virginia. I lived in the Ohio River Valley for a third of my life. Okay? Not a resident of Ohio, I'll admit that. I'm here to admit something else. I am an environmentalist. I care quite a bit about what happens to our ecosystems, to the planet as a whole. But I want to say a couple unpopular things as far as the environmental community goes. I don't stand up here claiming environmentalism as my personal fight because I care about polar bears on distant ice caps or coral reefs that I'm not going to ever have the money to go see. I think those are beautiful. I think they're pretty cool. I think they're worth protecting. But the fact of the matter is I am an environmentalist because I care about people. I care about you guys. I don't know yet. Don't know most of you, but I really care. This is the fight I am fighting for people. Period. End of discussion. I am here to state, you can probably guess my opposition to the plant, to the permit that's being granted or may not be granted. We know, okay, that there are going to be immediate and lasting negative impacts on this community and the communities that are connected to it through the waterways and through the air. Okay? Those facts have been stated ad nauseum tonight over and over and over again. There's cancer-causing chemicals that will go into the water. They will. They will go into the air. They will. We do know this because of Cancer Alley in Louisiana. The people there, 1 minute left, cool. The people there have 3 times the cancer rate than the national average throughout the United States. 3 times. Okay, the presence of dioxins in people's bloodstreams. Dioxins are a cancer-causing chemical compound. Okay, in Cancer Alley, Louisiana, the presence of those dioxins is in the 95th percentile of the country at the median in that area. That means over half of the people in that community have 95% more dioxins in their bloodstream than the rest of the country. That could happen here. It really could. If this petrochemical complex build-out happens here, cancer rates are going to go up. And I know cancer happens everywhere, but they will go up. So I'm not asking you to think about climate costs because you care about polar bears. I'm not asking you to think about climate costs because you care about ecosystems. I'm asking you to care about yourselves and your children.
Thank you.
This discharge permit, just like the air pollution permit, and I know we're just talking about the modifications, but it is inadequate. And the big question is, how does the Ohio EPA think that's going to be able to adequately monitor all the pollution from the 1,000 additional frac pads a year and this chemical plant and all the huge pipeline compressor stations that are going to be spewing toxins into our air and water? You don't have enough inspectors already, and nobody is investing the money for the bonds and insurance or paying adequate severance taxes, let alone budgeting to add all the inspectors that are necessary to make sure that these facilities are operating even within the inadequate parameters. Without 24/7 fence line monitoring, without even baseline testing of the air and water, where the cracker plant is to be built, there could be no possible way that the foreign investors could be held accountable. Destroying our
Upon review of the proposed water permit for the PTTG cracker plant, it is obvious that there is a lack of adequate protections against pollution for the Ohio River, a drinking water source for 5 million people. The general language used in the Clean Water Act does not provide the details necessary for effective enforcement. The permit also fails to require sampling to occur while all industrial and treatment processes are operational. Without this requirement, samples may be taken while critical components of the facility are offline, making the samples useless. Therefore, the informed, concerned residents of Belmont County are standing in opposition of this dangerously polluting facility. The local officials and building unions are supporting PPTG, saying that jobs are needed. But clean air and water are needed even more for the economic future of this valley. Why hasn't anybody asked us what kind of jobs we want? There are documented risks associated with cracker plants. For example, in the community of Norco, Louisiana, a petrochemical plant exploded and lifted houses off their foundations, broke all the windows and knocked people out of bed. 7 Shell employees died in that cracker plant explosion. In another community living nearby a cracker plant, residents of St. Gabriel, Louisiana, called the street on which they lived Cancer Alley because there were 15 cancer victims in a 2-block stretch. Half a mile away, there were 7 victims with cancer living in 1 block. The 85-mile stretch of the Mississippi River from Baton Rouge to Louisiana was formerly referred to as the petrochemical corridor. But reports of numerous cases of cancer occurring in the small rural communities on both sides of that river, the entire area became known as Cancer Alley. Industrial accidents and accidental releases of pollutants are common occurrences in Cancer Alley. The petrochemical company in Lake Charles, Louisiana was charged with contaminating local groundwater supplies by discharging millions of pounds of ethylene dichloride, a human carcinogen, into a local stream. 2 years later, hundreds of laborers filed suit against this company, claiming they were exposed to carcinogens. We do not want the Ohio River Valley to become another Cancer Alley. We are demanding that the Ohio EPA put public health and workers' safety and environmental protection over foreign corporate interests behind this toxic petrochemical scheme. Thank you.
Thank you.
Water pollution from a petrochemical refinery is considerable in and of itself. But when you consider the vast tentacles of this industry, the pipelines and the radioactive flowback, you have a real mess. We live in a moment in history when we have dire warnings from the UN and our own US government that we must move quickly to avoid the most catastrophic consequences of climate change. The time is now, and the Ohio EPA must demonstrate bold leadership to deny this foreign company with one goal: to make plastic that's already choking the planet and already in our blood. Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania should all be working together to create a thriving economy that builds upon the basic building blocks of life: clean air, clean water, clean food, good jobs, and a healthy place to live and raise our families. Thank you.
That we have a quasi-governmental organization called the Ohio River Valley Water Sanitation Commission that actually has an extensive set of parameters that they test for on the Ohio River. It's much more extensive than the Ohio EPA's parameters, and I would suggest that if the Ohio EPA is truly interested in protecting human health and the environment, that they adopt all of Orseco's parameters in regards to this permit.
I've traveled 60 miles tonight to testify because I live 6 miles from the construction site of Royal Dutch Shell's massive ethane cracker in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. And I've witnessed the industry's disregard for our water. This hub is not being planned to ensure our energy independence, but to ensure industry profits from the increased consumption of plastic. At a time when China will no longer take our ocean-choking plastic trash, the 2 county crackers would produce 2.5 million metric tons of ethylene for plastic pellets each year. This plan recklessly disregards the fact that decades-old microplastics have been found in the Arctic, or that microplastics are now detected in our blood, our urine, and in breast milk. We do not need more plastic, but we do need to give our children and grandchildren a future. Finally,
January 9th marks 5 years to the day that one of the greatest chemical disasters this side of the new millennia has happened. A petrochemical known as methylcyclohexane methanol, or MCHM, spilled from its holding tank and into the public water intakes of 9 West Virginia counties. My father, a Vietnam veteran, a union coal miner, retired, and a good old boy like most of you here, spent the last weeks of his life without access to clean water. So it is sheer insanity to me that 5 years later, companies are pushing to build a petrochemical mega complex upstream of the drinking water source of 5 million people. It is not a matter of if, but when something goes wrong, state and federal regulators are not prepared nor equipped to deal with a mega disaster. This is one of the lessons we learned from the MCHM spill. Not to mention state and federal governments are currently actively working as we speak to gut water regulations.
Good evening, my name is Brian DiPaolo. I am a resident of Ohio. I have cousins who live here in Belmont County. I'm an Eagle Scout and a recent college graduate. I work as a solar consultant at Yellow Light, Ohio's largest solar panel design and installation company. We've got installations in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, as well as the surrounding states. And I'm here today with one of our clients, Mrs. Harper, and her husband, to speak on the importance of investing in solar energy for jobs in this state. We know that renewable energy, especially solar photovoltaic, is a viable form of energy in this region of Ohio. Renewable energy provides sound financial returns for both investors as well as consumers. Renewable energy is a viable means for producing clean, sustainable energy in a consistent manner. And last, renewable energy can provide for much needed economic growth to Ohio, particularly in the Appalachia region. In recent decades, renewable energy has become more affordable than fossil fuels. A study conducted by the International Renewable Energy Agency in 2018 shows that the costs of both wind as well as solar have decreased dramatically, 23% and 73% respectively since 2010, and they're continuing to decrease. Additionally, the price of electricity has increased at a consistent rate here in the state of about 3% each year. So you pair these two, the increasing cost of electricity, the decreasing cost in renewable energy, and solar energy, as well as our renewable counterparts, will provide sound financial savings to homeowners. There's no doubt that renewable energy is also far more environmentally feasible and sustainable than fossil fuels. Fossil fuel emissions for natural gas, coal, and petrol are significantly higher than those of all renewable energies combined. Renewable energies such as solar and wind replenish easily on a daily basis, whereas fossil fuels take millions of years to form. Renewable energy forms a path of considerable job and economic growth for this state. The United States Chamber of Conference states that in best case scenario, hydraulic fracturing is slated to create a total of 3.5 million jobs by 2035. Currently, there are 10.3 million people employed in renewable energy. For generations, the hardworking people of Appalachia have been taken advantage of economically as well as environmentally. My grandfather was an Italian-American immigrant who lived in Bel Air, Ohio with his family when he came here in the 1930s. At the time, many of his family members were forced to work in hazardous coal mines, working with a form of energy that was dangerous to their health. The difference between the early 20th century and today is that we have a viable alternative that we can invest in, which is renewable energy. Instead of investing in infrastructure for fossil fuels such as hydraulic fracturing, the state of Ohio should invest in renewable energy because it's affordable, developed, and sustainable. Renewable energy can create more jobs than fossil fuels while protecting our environment for future generations. So on behalf of the hundreds of Ohioans who are employed in the renewable energy sector, as well as the thousands who enjoy the benefits of renewable energy, we ask for the cracker plant for the state to invest more in renewable energy. Thank you.
Also, according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, climate change will push the Ohio River and its tributaries into uncharted waters, setting off economic and environmental crises like never before across the 13-state region. Increasingly potent storms will cause river levels to surge, risking major floods in low-lying cities. Dilly's Bottom is low-lying, right next to the river. This permit does not address the potential for flooding of the plant whatsoever. What steps does PTT plan to take when a flood threatens to wash lots of chemicals into the river? And what does the EPA plan to do in order to protect us from such a situation? Perhaps flooding isn't required to be addressed by this permit, but if the EPA does not protect us from this threat, who will?
They're destroying our children's chances for a livable future and ensuring there will be no long-term prosperity for this region. This region has options for a better future. Spend the taxpayer money to attract those jobs instead of just accepting what is offered to these big foreign entities. They want the product and to plan to leave us with the pollution. And you are responsible for allowing them to do so. And those who approve this plant throughout the state, you will be remembered for being so lazy, short-sighted, and corrupt is to support the PTT cracker plant and fracking, and we won't forget.
Thank you very much.
Please call the Belmont County Commissioners and tell them we do not want a cracker plant on the Ohio River, and join Concerned Ohio River Residents Facebook page to keep posted on updates. Aho.
What do we want? Clean water! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Clean water! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Clean air! When do we want it? Now!
The Antares Connection, empowering the people to protect Mother Earth by sharing the truth and encouraging local activism and grassroots movements. We are the ones we've been waiting for.